This is the Andres Segovia Show.
What's going on, everyone? It's Andres, and I was about to do another episode talking about the housing and homelessness crisis in Los Angeles when I got to thinking, you know what? I've done this episode multiple times before. I feel like we're living a Groundhog Day here in LA. I don't know how many of you have heard. We've probably only seen about a handful, literally a handful of new home building permits approved since the fires. I know these things take time, but these were supposed to be expedited, and we need homes, and we're supposed to get ready for the Olympics in 3 years. At this rate, come on. Well, just to give you an idea of just how terrible things are, I decided to go back just to show you that not much has changed at all with the approach to the issues of housing and homelessness in the state of California, particularly Los Angeles, where it's even more stupid. So for the first time, I'm going to present to you parts 1 and 2 of a series that I did back then. I was only on YouTube, and it was called Of Housing and Homelessness. Now, the first part got way more plays than the second part, and because that one was widely shared, the second one got throttled by YouTube. So I figured, you know what? Why don't I share that, since it's technically I'm filming this little intro on a Thursday, so might as well make it a Throwback Thursday. So this is a throwback to a series that I called Of Housing and Homelessness, and it's loaded with resources. So I'll be leaving a link to, or links in this case, to both show notes accompanying those episodes in the description down below. So for those of you watching on YouTube Rumble, you'll be able to see those links. Everybody else, I will be reposting this on my website at theandresegovia.com, so you can pull up every single resource. Some of these videos are actually no longer available on YouTube. They were taken down by YouTube from the original news sources, because supposedly those news sources, and this is from the Epoch Times and NTD News, they covered it. They were those channels were removed by YouTube. This is after the 2020 stuff that was going on. So it ended early on in the Biden administration. So this is the only place you're going to find those original videos. So I'm very proud to be able to preserve history and being able to share it with you all here. So I do hope that you're able to watch this through. And also, if you want to know more, check out the links below. They will have the resources were available where some of these things are still preserved, so you can see these things for yourselves. Because there is one section where I highlight what happened to this guy that was building tiny homes for homeless individuals in Los Angeles, particularly on the 110 freeway and Slauson Avenue. For anybody of you in the area, you would know what I'm talking about. And I'm like, dude, I saw those things before, and no wonder I don't see them anymore. And the only reason this came back to light, because as I go to record this, just just several hours prior, I saw that very project being highlighted as a good thing in Banning, California, which is somewhere in Riverside, San Bernardino counties. I'm like, haven't I seen this before? So like, dude, these things have been tried. And believe me, I have to wonder, like, are people really voting for these things? There's some people in LA that do vote for the stupid over and over and over again, and they never learn. But there are people that don't believe in any of this. Hopefully we'll see some change for these next few elections, but time will tell. But until then, check this out. Parts 1 and 2 for the first time together here on this episode of Housing and Homelessness.
You've only heard about it. And some of the things I'm going to touch on today are actually things that are a bit dated. But there's a reason I'm going to give you that context, because this month I'm doing episodes on addressing how we can fix California. Hashtag fix California, hashtag save California, because you've heard about the Cal Exodus or the California Exodus, but you probably don't entirely know why. And what's sad about the whole thing about people leaving California, a lot of the people that have left voted for the policies that caused the reason for them to leave in the first place, and they then continued voting that same way wherever they landed, upending a lot of the economies that they're arriving at, which is causing tensions in those regions too. So what exactly is happening in California that you need to know about with respects to, eventually, that I'll touch on, not on this episode though, with respects to housing? There is a homelessness crisis, and it's the crisis doesn't even begin to cover it at this point anymore. And what I'm going to touch on is basically a news item that was done by Reason.com I think it was December 2019. They researched it for quite a while before they finally published. And I've been holding on to this video of theirs for the longest time. And any links to the original content will be available at the show notes of this episode at www.dangersegovia.com. I recommend that you go check it out yourself, dive into it. This was then, still applies today, but it's just to give you context. The reason being is because the next episodes that I'm going to be covering with respects to fixing California, a lot of people you're going to start hearing, if they haven't done so already, they're going to say, oh yeah, because 2020 happened and that upended a lot of things. No, that's why this episode is important, because this is the precursor to show you this was a problem before 2020, and any excuses anybody can use about the lockdowns exacerbating things, nope, not true. These things were a problem long before. They got out of hand before 2020 and have only been made worse by continued mismanagement of the municipalities and counties, even state. So I have to address the homelessness crisis occurring here in California, particularly in areas like Los Angeles and San Francisco. Today's episode is going to focus on Los Angeles, and I'm going to basically stick to Los Angeles for the most part, and so does this video. And that's my prelude, I guess, to say this is a bit of a Local Broker Reacts. So I'm probably going to label it as such, but it's not entirely that, in that I'm going to tell you about this to give you insight as to what the city has been doing. And in the next episode, talk about how those programs and policies they've introduced have failed spectacularly, in some cases before they even got off the ground. And I'm glad I held off on this one, because it's been a year and a half since this particular video, and well, it's considerably worse now. So without further ado, let's get this video going. Let me just pull it up here for myself. This is Los Angeles spending $1 billion to address homelessness, and it's failing.
We cannot help someone while they're living in a tent. We need a triage-like approach. They're not doing it at nearly the intensity or the urgency or the scope that we needed.
This is Skid Row, a 53 square block area of downtown Los Angeles where more than 2,500 homeless individuals reside on the streets. California's homeless population has jumped by more than 12% in the last 5 years, and it's part of a national crisis.
Skid Row is what I call the worst man-made disaster in the United States. There's human waste on the sidewalks. There's all kinds of disease. I actually lost my right leg on the streets of Skid Row from getting a staph infection from coming in contact with human waste.
Reverend Andy Bales is the CEO of Union Rescue Mission, which is the nation's largest private homeless shelter. He says that the city of Los Angeles, which has the largest unsheltered homeless population in America, has failed to deal with what's become a public health and humanitarian crisis. More than 1,000 homeless people died on the streets of Los Angeles County last year, according to government figures. Meanwhile, the city is spending more than $1 billion on a long-term housing solution that likely will take more than a decade to complete.
There's a particular...
I don't remember how much of this video addresses a little bit of the housing part, but just the mere fact that Los Angeles was spending that much, and that program, again, it was a spectacular failure before it got off the ground, and it's been years now. I'll highlight just how bad it's gone.
Particular type of TB found only in the world on Skid Row. We've had typhus, medieval disease carried by fleas on rats. When you leave people on the streets, they are quickly devastated by what they experience. Homelessness destroys people physically, mentally, emotionally, educationally, vocationally, every way you can think of. And in LA, there's nowhere to go, right? We put a roof over 25% of the people devastated by homelessness. We leave 75% on the streets.
Los Angeles is now coming together to confront the greatest moral and humanitarian crisis of our time, homelessness.
In 2016, Los Angeles voters approved a referendum to spend more than $1.2 billion building new housing for the homeless. It's part of a plan championed by Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti, who...
Some people are calling Garcetti King Garcetti. He is absolutely an awful mayor. How he still is in power, I don't know. Well, maybe I do know. He's been confronted over the failures of this very program But all he ever wants to show are the pictures of him doing the shovel ready where they're going to start the development. But never any updates as to why it's taken forever to get one apartment development done. Why did it take 3 years, Eric Garcetti? This goes all the way up to Sacramento, okay? But we're dealing with Garcetti. Say we're gonna solve the problem. Then why did it take 3 years? How many died? How many homeless died within those 3 years? What could have been better done with the funds there? Keep going.
Declined our interview request.
And I will accept nothing less than a home for every person who needs a roof under their head. We are here to end homelessness.
Yeah, you know who wanted to end poverty too and said it'll be over in 10 years? President Lyndon B. Johnson, when he declared war on poverty. Created the welfare state, and we have more poverty than there's ever been, and debt.
The city set a target of 10,000 new housing units within a decade that were supposed to take between 3 and 6 years to build. But 3 years in, just 1% of those apartments will be ready for occupancy by the end of 2019.
You hear that? We're going to build 10,000 units. Yes, we're going to build 10,000 units. And how many developments? No idea. But 10,000 in 3 to 6 years. And in 3 years, only 1% was done? Do the math. And that was delayed too.
Too late. When they get through spending the money, it's gonna be triple of the homeless that's out here now.
A lot of these projects are taking forever to build. They need to find something now. Look at them. They have no place to go.
Building anything in California isn't easy. The state's legislative analyst's office found that increasing competition for limited housing is the primary driver of housing cost growth in coastal California, which has some of the nation's highest housing prices and rents because local interest groups often use tools like zoning and the state's environmental review law to delay or kill new housing projects. The shortage drives up prices, and some living on the margins are priced out and turned to the streets. And even after voters approved the more than $1 billion specifically to build housing for the increasing homeless population, a recent report by LA's Comptroller's Office attributed the delays and cost overruns largely to regulatory barriers, permitting challenges, and bureaucratic confusion. Meanwhile, the existing shelters are running out of space, threatening to force men like Jimmy Anderson back onto the streets of Skid Row.
I'm glad they addressed that. A lot of you probably know me best as, well, I'm a broker. I deal with real estate. Before I became a broker, some years ago, for half of my life, I worked in construction, family business and all. So technically my father started the construction company before I was born. So I was born into it, you can say. So that's where I made my living, so to speak, in construction, dealing with cities, dealing with permits and planning departments and divisions for multiple different cities in different counties. Every city has their own thing. Compton is one of the strictest. LA is insane with its bureaucracy. Long Beach thinks that they want to one-up Los Angeles, so they're super strict. I've dealt with Newport, San Diego. So I've dealt with a lot of these. And I dealt with some of the worst cases too, when you're dealing with substandards and you have the housing department involved in all this. Pure red tape to line pockets of the bureaucrats, all in the name of sticking it to the landlord and helping the people they're pretending to care about, which is the tenant. And in the long run, they haven't helped them at all. Well, without getting too sidetracked into that rabbit trail, the point is that I know everything that they're referring to. The city said they're going to build this much. We just need this much money from you taxpayers of Los Angeles in order to build this housing. Okay, here's the money. Let's get it done. Then the city goes, okay, let's get this done. Pass it over to the other department within the bureaucracy. And it's like, okay, you can't get this done. Why? Because you got to meet this, and this, and this, and that with terms of the building code. Okay, what are the delays looking like? Well, depends. How do the structural plans look like? Oh, you got to fix this thing, go back to the drawing board. But you took 6 months to review this thing. Yeah, well, get back in line. turn the plans over again in queue. Planning department looks at it. It's like, oh, look at that. We're in a new year, new building codes. Back to the drawing board. You can't make this up. Where did all that money go? And they say, well, the contractors just want the money from the change orders, which is possibly true because they knew this going in. They knew what they were going to face with the bureaucratic process and being so slow. Okay, so what now?
Soon the women and kids gonna take over the rescue union mission, and all the men's gonna have to move out there, back out here on the street.
The city's approach, known as Housing First, was adopted by municipalities nationwide after Utah reportedly reduced chronic homelessness by 91% by giving away permanent apartments with no strings attached. But state auditors later attributed those findings to a statistical error, and building housing for the homeless is considerably more costly and complex in Los Angeles than in Salt Lake City. The city initially ballparked the permanent units at a median cost of $350,000 apiece. 3 years later, the estimated cost rose to more than $500,000 per unit. Andy Bales says he saw it coming.
Like I said, bureaucracy. And who's the one getting rich in all this? And who's suffering in the meanwhile? And when you confront these politicians about all this, they don't want to talk about it. Eric Garcetti didn't want to chime in on this. His office, they refused to comment. Why? Well, because, I meant well. But it didn't work, so roll it back. No, I can't. It's like, if it doesn't work, why are you throwing more money at it? People need help now.
I was a critic 10 years ago of this plan, even before it came about. A very expensive way of spending all the resources on a few and leaving the many out in the cold.
Bales wanted the city to allocate a portion of the money to nonprofits and shelters like his to provide temporary relief.
And they laughed at me, they made fun of me in the newspaper, and here we are afterwards. There's this group that is so dogmatic about permanent supportive housing as the solution. They think everybody deserves a $600,000 unit with a granite countertop, and anything short of that is not good enough.
Bales says that given the current emergency, the city should reconsider its heavy focus on finding a long-term solution.
If we put 4 of these up in each district, 15 districts, 60 total, we could get, I want you to hear this, we could get 13,000 people off the streets.
Union Rescue Mission just opened what's called a sprung structure, a relatively inexpensive but sturdy and weather-resistant tent with 120 beds.
We cannot spend $600,000 per person per unit and ever get it done. But we could get there at $14,000 per bunk in a sprung structure, and we could get there at $50,000 mobile homes or $100,000 container homes or $10,000 3D printed concrete homes with a bathroom and a kitchen and can be put up in 24 to 48 hours. We've got to think innovatively or we're going to have a bigger disaster on our hands.
I did an episode called Is Housing a Right? I recommend you go check that out for more context to what that all means. Because in an upcoming episode, I'll be able to explain to you better why sometimes the way I say things might not be the way the politicians mean it, even though we're technically saying the same thing. And I'm going to be touching on that for the Housing Affordability Crisis episode that I'm working on. Because, that's the next step over. That was meant to also address this, but it's exacerbating the problem. With respect to solutions, like you said, 24, 48 hours, why is that not a good idea compared to delayed construction and throwing money at the interest of the commercial contractors industries and the big developers? They're the ones getting rich in all this. Just not to mention it's the unions behind them, but whatever.
In terms of where to put these structures, the city owns more than 7,500 lots, though neighborhood councils regularly fight to keep shelters out. Property owners in Skid Row would like to see the police clear homeless encampments out of their neighborhood. which could also help to avert the public health crisis. But past court settlements prevent that, and a September ruling on a case out of Idaho from the U.S. Ninth Circuit Appeals Court found that doing so constitutes cruel and unusual punishment when cities don't have adequate shelter to accommodate everyone living on the streets. Los Angeles City and County have signed onto a lawsuit challenging that ruling.
It's along those lines that I should also mention that, the problem got worse where vagrants were breaking into local businesses. Some of the worst cases that I've seen actually come out of Sacramento, of all places. And when we're talking about small business and police don't do anything about it, they can't do anything about it, they're told not to do anything about it, and the insurance stops covering a lot of those things. Because, oh, they have insurance. Unless you pay for it, you don't know what you're talking about. And the situation was where, in this case, a hair salonist ended up having to close her shop, and eventually she moved out of California. How is that a solution? When a lot of the solutions the city wants to permanently fund for these things have to come from small businesses. And if they're leaving, where's the money going to come from? Someone asked a great question. If you can just use the Federal Reserve to print money, why do you need to raise taxes? Is it because that's not how money works? I added the last part. That was the original question. The original question was, if you can just print money, why do you need to raise taxes? There's a solution, right? But obviously that doesn't work.
Firmly believe that the police are not an answer to homelessness, should not be part of any kind of homeless service system, and definitely should not be criminalizing people for basic behaviors.
Becky Dennison works for Venice Community Housing Corporation, which opposes the criminalization of sidewalk camping in Los Angeles.
The idea that folks without housing are out there by choice or not trying to get into housing and we just have to arrest people or nothing else will happen is a complete falsehood.
At some point, isn't there a conflict of rights between, say, a property owner or a business owner who doesn't want tents right in front of their business and the ability of someone to sleep on the sidewalk? How do you reconcile that conflict?
Sidewalks should obviously be available to everybody, so making sure they're passable and all of those kinds of things. It's a way of sharing public space and acknowledging that some folks are living in our public spaces because they have no place else to go.
But proponents of the lawsuit say the city needs guidance from the courts on what constitutes adequate shelter before investing in solutions that might free them to enforce anti-camping laws.
If there was a push for more temporary housing, let's say they built 30,000 beds, would that justify prohibiting sidewalk camping?
I can't imagine it does. If we ever get to that point, maybe that's a debate and a dialogue we'll have to have as a society. Is there some level of control we want to have over our streets and sidewalks? I would say no. Maybe there's some arguments to say yes, but we're not there. We have to focus on solutions and get away from this idea that somehow we'll be able to fix our neighborhood problems by being able to arrest people.
Given the lack of progress on permanent or temporary housing, Bales is also hesitant to sign on to the lawsuit for the time being.
I'm not signing on to remove people from the streets until we have enough places to go. When we get that, then we can worry about asking somebody to leave the streets and go to this place.
Under the increasing pressure in recent months, the city has erected a few of its own sprung structures to address the crisis. Bales said,
I guess touch on that is because we're nearing the end of this. I didn't hear it on this one. There's a lot of rundown hotels in Los Angeles. Why can't the city just pay to have those and just bring it up to health and safety codes for each room and house people there, even if it's temporary, right? Or at least buy out the buildings outright. They're throwing money to people that cannot use it. And will they even live to see that when you had people were dying at a rate of 1,000 a year on the streets? And it only got worse in 2020.
As it's still not nearly enough.
It's ridiculous. I mean, who would want to leave 44,000 people on the streets to die while you stick with your very expensive plan to help a few? We do have a FEMA-like, Red Cross-like crisis going on with homelessness, and it needs to be an immediate call to action to get everybody who's willing under a roof.
All right. Thank you, Reason TV or Reason.com. Like I said, I'm gonna leave this for those of you watching the show notes. The video itself is embedded there for a reason. You can see the whole thing uninterrupted without my commentary. You can share with friends and stuff, so you know. In the next episode that I'm going to be covering on the Fix California series, I will be addressing this very issue in terms of how this HHH program, as it's been called, housing the homeless, and how it has failed spectacularly, and it should be taken as an example of what not to do. But of course, these politicians will never see it that way because they want you to know, it's like, hey, I tried. It's like, no, you've done worse. You harmed people in the process. And you only lined the pockets with special interests. How is that helping? Look, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Good intentions are not helping people. Helping people is helping people. And what has changed since then? Now because like I forget, Dennison, last name Dennison, she was saying we gotta stop criminalizing people sleeping on the sidewalks. The yes and the no. The problem is that if you're victimizing just one side, you're also excusing some of the attacks happening to the innocent bystanders that are also just trying to get by, that ended up getting injured, maimed, or in some cases even killed, just trying to walk by. Like I said, I've had friends that have also been out there, even from out of state, so they don't know what it's like to navigate themselves around these urban areas, that have been assaulted. A lot were threatened just because they were simply trying to help some of the people living on the streets. Thought they were feds. That you was out there trying to track, I guess, drug sales or something. I don't know, but my brother was present when this happened, and it was just. It's a lot more complicated than it seems. And like I said, it's only gotten worse. And we need to address this now. But LA is moving at a glacier's pace and spending billions in the process. And helping nobody. And the worst part is that no one is holding them accountable. Let me briefly introduce myself to all of you. I mentioned at the onset that I am a broker, but I also come from the world of construction and property management because I've been an investor in Los Angeles primarily and Orange County for, I would say, 20 years now. So I have a leg on two different industries, construction and real estate, that work very closely in hand. They depend on one another to operate. And I give you that background because that's the world that I come from, especially being born and raised in Los Angeles, to give you, I guess, my perspective, my feedback about what's been going on with Los Angeles and, of course, the state on the ground, how to address both the homelessness and the housing affordability crises, because those both are crises, and some say they're intertwined. Maybe, maybe not. But whatever it is, they need to be addressed. And I will give you a rundown of some of the proposals that I'm suggesting towards the latter end of this episode, but I have to basically pick up and wrap up where I left off in the previous episode. So you have not yet seen my episode titled The Los Angeles Homelessness Crisis. I recommend you go check it out because that's kind of like a prologue to this one right here. That one, I was basically showing you on the ground what's been happening as of December 2019, courtesy of Reason TV, which they should be tagged in the description down below. They were definitely in the previous episode. With respects to where I was leaving off in the previous episode was basically where things were in Los Angeles as of December 2019. We're now midway through 2021, and that's on purpose because I wanted to basically set up the groundwork to show you that no matter what is being said by politicians now or will try to use as an excuse, 2020 did not contribute to or is not responsible for what is happening with our homelessness and affordability crises. Okay, that's why I gave you the prelude. You need to understand what is going on, and it is the fault of policies. It is the responsibility of these politicians that their solutions are not working, and their ideas are to continue throwing more money at the programs that keep failing. One of those such programs that I referenced was Proposition HHH. And that was in the previous episode talking about that. So let me give you a rundown. Look, this time I got a bunch of printouts everywhere because, my goodness, there's just so much to all of this. And I guess there's a spoiler alert here. This episode might be a bit of a downer, And also, I might get very passionate about this because believe me, I tried approaching this every which way. I tried my best. This is probably one of the most prepped episodes I ever done. And I know I'm not going to cover everything that I wanted to cover. And I know I'm going to miss something. And I know I'm going to be having a nightmare in post-production trying to I should have said this or I should have said that. Come what may, I'm just going to give you the straight scoop. I got my notes, and come what may, this is what I'm going to present. And if I miss something, I'll try to cover it in some other episode. But every single resource, even the ones I will not reference that I have in my repertoire here, will be available at www.dangersegovia.com. Look for this episode. The show notes have every single link, every single reference, news articles, government sites, statistics. Everything is linked there. And I even embedded episodes for reference because I might lift some clips from some of those episodes, but I'm not lifting everything. There's a lot more research that you can do on your own time, but I curated a lot of that for you at the show notes. Now, having said that, let me pick up where I left off in the previous episode with respects to Proposition HHH. First off, what is it? Proposition HHH was basically this program that was proposed for Angelinos to vote on, and over 70% said, yes, let's fund this thing so we can house our homeless. The intention was to create supportive housing in about 10,000 housing that will be available for our homeless and at risk of homelessness. That was the intent. The devil was in the details. Not exactly true. It's more like 7,000, but whatever. In the previous episode, the Los Angeles Homelessness Crisis, it talks about that because it asks, where are we with the program? As of December 2019, for 3.5 years, give or take 3 years, since the passage of Proposition HHH, Los Angeles had a total of 0 available units through that Proposition HHH. And Mayor King Garcetti, his intent was, with this program, to have 10,000 units built in 10 years. I don't know what it is about this arbitrary 10 years. Forget those goals, okay? Let's get down and audit what is happening right now. As of December 2019, there were a total of 0 prepared for occupancy units according to the Proposition HHH program, which from the lamayor.org website, I think it's the .org, the intention was for the city of Los Angeles to aggressively pursue the development of supportive housing for homeless individuals and those that experience homelessness throughout the city. The proposition was approved by voters in 2016 to facilitate the project and program proposals using both traditional and innovative financing and construction techniques. The city has released 3 funding and or city-owned property proposal opportunities seeking the best design and development ideas from the community. First was a request for proposals for innovative design projects on a city-owned parcel using HHH funding. Second was the regular 2018 and 2019 round 3 HHH call for projects. In other words, developers come over and see what we can do. And lastly was the HHH Housing Innovative Challenge request for proposals. In other words, hey, how many of you would like to contribute to a good goal and be rewarded for that? That was basically it. Now, there's other stuff in here, and I'm basically cycling through this, but that was the intent. The first... I told you, I got a bunch of stuff here. Some of this is deemed digital because I couldn't print them all out. It took 3 years of blown deadlines, but LA opens its first homelessness housing project. Los Angeles Times article dated January 7th, 2020. This was a wooden frame rising at 88th and Vermont. And that wooden frame for 3 years was like, one day homeless will be able to live here. One day, someday. And it took 3 years. Bureaucratic nonsense. LA says, we got the money. Let's go ahead. Let's incentivize these developers. Come on over, bid for these projects. We're paying for these projects. Get it done. They say, yes, great. So then they go to the other department within the city to say, here are the plans that the city wanted so we can get these developments for our homeless going. Okay, great. So the city, Los Angeles, looks at it and says, no, this is not good enough. Go back to the drawing board. I'm sorry, what? Where do you think all that happened? Initially, when these projects were getting off the ground, they were bidded around. This is ridiculous, by the way. I would say on average, $300,000 per unit built. We're talking about apartment units, folks. Apartment units. I come from the world of residential construction. I know how much you can do with $300,000. This is ridiculous. Per unit. When this Koreatown project was done, well, this one's in Koreatown. This is 80th in Vermont. The Koreatown project is a different one. What was it? The development is the first to open of about 20 projects under construction. So this one was not the Koreatown one. The Koreatown one went when all was said and done, because by then there were about 3 developments after January 7th, 3 developments that had opened up. But get this, what was originally estimated to be $300,000 per apartment unit ballooned to $550,000 per unit. Same building. But the bureaucratic process slowed everything down. Now, the Koreatown one is a great point. I think it's in here in this article, but again, I'm using my phone. I don't want to get all into it. $700,000 per unit. This is utter nonsense. Why do we need to spend absolutely so much to construct these things? I'm not going to get into all the background of it because I touched on it in the previous episode, and it was touched upon by those that were interviewed of the ones that run the homeless shelters and deal with the homeless in the previous episode, Los Angeles Homelessness Crisis. That's why I say check that one out first, so I don't have to repeat myself on everything, because I don't know how long this episode might be. But it's to tell you that there were faster solutions that could get a roof over a homeless person's head within 48 hours. The city didn't want to fund that. Instead, they wanted this one. Why? Well, because, we got to have these modern open design aesthetics. We need to have granite tops with stainless steel appliances. Excuse me? It's like, okay, so it took at least 3 years to get the first one open. And if you go to the LA Mayor's website where you can track the progress of the Proposition HHH supportive housing development, you'll see there's 3 different pipelines, 2 of them which are in respect to supportive housing, which total up to 7,000 proposed units. The other 3,000 are from non-supportive funding. But it's not even HHH funds. No, it's not, but they lumped it in to try to add up the 10,000 units that Garcetti was proposing to get done within 10 years. The fact that everything was moving so slow, the LA controller had to do an audit of the Proposition HHH stuff. And this comes from The Real Deal, dated September 10th, 2020. September 10th, 2020, folks. The Los Angeles $1.2 billion bond that was meant to tackle homelessness has done very little to address the growing problems. That's the bleak assessment of City Controller Ron Galperin, whose audit released Wednesday, this was as of September 10th, 2020, found that just 3 housing projects, 228 total units, have been completed in the 4 years since Proposition HHH passed with the overwhelming support of voters. 228, and you still got 9,700 to go at the rate of 4 years for 225 units, say. How long is that going to take? An utter ridiculous amount of time. Look, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. I'm going to keep repeating that in every episode that I can when I reference this, because these failed policies have done nothing to help our homeless. The ones that actually tried helping are private groups or individuals that try to do something. This one actually I came across before I even started filming. A musician named Elvis Summers, I think it is. Let me pull it up real quick. Elvis Summers. He crowdfunded $100,000 to build dozens of tiny homes. This was around the time that Proposition HHH wanted to be passed by the voters before the election. This was around fall 2016, and he got it done. And then, without warning, the city ended up picking up every single one of these tiny homes.
Most of Summers' tiny houses were placed on private land that's been donated to the project, such as a parking lot outside a convenience store and a church in Compton. A handful replaced the tents that have proliferated on freeway overpasses.
They're not right in front of a business. They're not in front of somebody's house, and the sidewalks are extra wide. So, it seemed, as far as public places, the safest, best place to be until I could get land and then take them and put them on property, building a small community.
But LA viewed the houses as a nuisance. In February, the city council amended a sweeps ordinance to allow the tiny houses to be seized without prior notice. On the morning of the 9th, police and garbage trucks descended, towing 3 of the houses to a Bureau of Sanitation lot for disposal.
My phone just blows up by everybody on 42nd Street, just freaking out. Like, they're throwing us out of the houses. They're telling us they're taking them. Like, what do we do? I mean, they wouldn't let them get their clothes or their medications. They threw them out, left them on the sidewalk. I pleaded with them. I was like, okay, well, look, they have wheel locks on them. Let me unlock the wheels at least, so you don't break them. No, they refused. They just wanted to take them and destroy them.
Summers managed to move 8 of the threatened houses into storage before they were confiscated, but their residents had nowhere to go.
I had to evict 2 veterans who paid their ticket. They shouldn't be homeless, period. Just, I get angry. They did their service. They gave up their dreams so the rest of us can be out here and be a bunch of assholes. There needs to be some respect.
And I'm leaving a link to that video in the description down below so you can see for yourself what transpired then so they could get Proposition HHH passed. And for those of you watching or go to the show notes, you'll be able to just find the video embedded there so you don't have to do anything else. Well, this is all to say that Proposition HHH has been a colossal failure. And you would think that, Garcetti would have learned that lesson. But in 2021, what do we have now? Garcetti's proposed budget includes funding for 5,600 HHH units for homelessness. And this is in respects to voters in November 2016, Proposition HHH, 1.2 billion, more than triple in Los Angeles, yada, yada, yada. On April 20th of this year, 2021, he's allocating $362 million in Proposition HHH funding to construct 89 supportive housing units with more than 5,600 units for people experiencing homelessness. It's somewhere in here, but this was included in the budget. So in other words, they're pumping more money into this thing. And they hired a concierge that was hired with the $1.5 billion bond that was supposed, or $1.5 million bond with private funds, they say. I don't know who provided the private funds for this. But in other words, they hired outside bureaucracy to manage the bureaucratic process that's been the problem in the first place for stonewalling this whole thing. Again, as of September 10th, 2020, only 228 units were built out of the 10,000 proposed within 10 years. Now we're 5.5 years into this thing. Well, about 5 years, give or take. And there's throw more money at it. You go to the website. I'll probably show a screenshot here. You can see 3 pipelines. Look at all these that are available. No, not available. They're in pre-development, the majority of them, because duh. And most of them that are in development are scheduled to hopefully open by next year or 2023 or 2024. We have more units that are available for occupancy as of this recording, but we're talking about in terms of dozens of units. This from Curve Los Angeles, dated June 12th, 2020. Los Angeles homelessness population grew by 13% since last year's count and is likely already worse. I'm not going to read into it because I have stats here that I'm going to get at. This one from February 2nd, 2021. Homelessness deaths in Los Angeles residents rise more than 30% in 2020. Now, some of you might think, well, of course, Andres, don't you understand that we have a pandemic? Because of the pandemic, we had the judicial council. No one's ever heard of them, but they're supposed to be like a council of the Supreme Court of California. Passed their first emergency order, installing an eviction moratorium that was more strict than whatever local areas had. And in the case of Los Angeles, they had the most strict eviction moratorium. We had both the rent freeze and an eviction moratorium. That means no one should have been out on the streets because there were no evictions being done. Secondly, there was a rent freeze, which is why property owners were the ones left holding the bag and to this day have not seen any relief come from the state of California for their responsibility in helping out those that say, you're not going to collect the rent, but you're not going to turn off the lights for the utilities you pay. You have to make sure you pay those things and you pay your taxes on time and you pay your mortgage unless you do forbearance, which in that case, you'll still probably lose your property, which is probably happening right now. They did all that and did not give anything of recourse or support to property owners. And now because Governor Gavin Newsom is facing the recall, he's like, we're going to use from the budget this much money to pay 100% of the rent owed. Yeah, but in some of those cases, which we don't really have all the details of the program yet, you need the cooperation of the tenants, who in most cases have already left, and the only way to collect back those funds is to take it to small claims court, which depending on what region you are, the court is probably not even open. Homelessness rates. This is from the Greater Los Angeles Homelessness Count. This is public information. Unless they fudge the numbers and change them. And I'm making sure that I have them in order. Yes, I do. From 2018, The homelessness population, 31,285 combined, all persons. That was an increase, by the way. That was an increase, well, actually decrease of 6% from 2017 to 2018. Good, some kind of progress. But from 2018 to 2019, we had a 14% increase in homelessness. We had a total of 35,550. The latest figures available. From 2019 to 2020, we saw an increase of 16%. All persons, 41,290. And in terms of all this, we had at least an average of 1,000 homeless deaths at the minimum annually. As of last year, I think one of these articles said it too. At least 1,300 residents, homeless residents of Los Angeles alone, have died. We shut down an entire country for less than that. I thought this was a crisis, Los Angeles. So, Garcetti, your mission to spend the money is for who? When we have a population of at least 41,000 people out on the streets and your intent is to eradicate homelessness, which is growing at a rate of 15% year over year, and God knows what number is going to be this year. If it's going up that much every single year and your goal was to have 10,000 units built in 10 years and only maybe 1,000 at most, I'm being generous here, have been done in 5 years, it's for who to enjoy? For who? The ones that actually have done something about it were shut down, like the musician, Elvis Summers. But there's others that are trying to do something about this, such as SDS, some kind of fund. I'm not familiar with them, but they are proposing, and I'm going to do a screenshot of this so you can see it too. They had a 40-unit South Los Angeles supportive housing project made out of shipping containers, but it won't look like it. And this article is from, interesting, where's the, dailynews.com. So again, all these links are available on the show notes. This was updated May 7, 2021. And this article goes on to explain these 40 units can be built, raised and built within months, because they're expecting to have this done by November, give or take, not having any delays. So this is from SDS Capital Group's Supportive Housing Fund. Now, this Supportive Housing Fund is described like this. The project that they're building is called the Dolores Huertas Apartments Project, being built on a city-owned lot at 5215 South Figueroa Street. I know exactly where that is. Valued at about $1.1 million. Minus the land, the property project is being fully funded through $7 million in private sector money from this Capital's Housing Fund. See, now, this is where they're getting something done, 40 units available within months. Now, I'm not familiar with this group, but what they're intending to do here is great. But the same question that I have with respect to Proposition HHH, and the same question I have here, why would, unless they're doing it from the goodness of their hearts, why would private funds of $7 million at least be invested to build houses for homeless unless they're trying to write it off in taxes because they're being charitable out of their good heart? One of the things that's not addressed in this Proposition HHH, and you have to read the fine print, this is all towards just developing. Some of these developments are supposed to continue the management of the building, the residential services that are in there, whether it's job training or psychiatric treatment for whoever might need it, depending on the ailments of the sufferings that some of these homelessness come in dealing with, or the drug addiction and stuff like that, to rehab them so they can get back into society. Who's funding all of that? That's the only question I have about this. Are they building this out of the goodness of their heart? I'm not judging here, not judging. Or is it because the city is going to be paying for the services that'll be in perpetuity? Because this is supposed to be permanent supportive housing. In other words, not for those that are not homeless or at risk of homelessness. Maybe Section 8, I don't know. We don't have all those details. And if they are, it's all confusing. But the point is, the private sector gets it done. Meanwhile, you have the California Association of Realtors, and I will name drop in again later, pushing, and they were happy that Gavin Newsom recently, like he actually did it, streamlined the development of some of these projects. And let me make sure I have it here. And I do have it. Nope. That's a homeless man assaulting Gavin Newsom. This was a KTLA 5. Link for those of you that are interested. Someone attacked him. He was going to go do a photo op, and he was attacked by a pizza from this homelessness man that went up to him and struck him. At least that's what I remember of. Well, look at that. It's not on these lists. Well, I had it, but the point is that Gavin Newsom was supposed to streamline the development of housing units, which is with respect to the housing affordability crisis that I will get to. But first, let me finish addressing the homelessness issue. And look, I don't know how long this was going to be, so I'm intending to timestamp this. So for those of you on YouTube, you'll be able to enjoy the timestamps for the most part. For everybody else, I'll still leave a chapter summary of where things are. So I addressed Proposition HHH, touch on the homelessness crisis. So let me wrap up what's happening with the homelessness crisis, because this is getting absolutely bonkers with respects to what's happening in Venice Beach, California. A lot of you might have heard about this. It's the world famous beach, and it's in absolute chaos. The thumbnail for this video are all pictures of the encampments, the chaos, the fires that are happening on Venice Beach, and the police are not able to do anything about it. But why aren't they able to do anything about it? Well, some of you might actually think it would be the defunding the police thing. No, that's only added to the problem. This goes back, actually. This is from February 6, 2019, from the California Globe. Police cannot police in dysfunctional California. Let me get to this section here. The turning point in California's progressive assault on law enforcement was the passage of Proposition 47 in November 2014. Basically, this thing the misleading title on this proposition was the Safe Neighborhoods and Schools Act. Yeah, sure. Safe Neighborhoods and Schools Act by defunding the police and not letting them arrest vagrants or people that were committing small crimes out on the streets, putting people in danger. No. So ostensibly, I'm reading from the article now in a paragraph, to empty the jails of expensively housed non-violent offenders, unintended consequences were felt immediately. Over 4 years later, the negative consequences of Proposition 47 continue to compound and intensify. Here are some of the impacts of Proposition 47. Free tens of thousands of felons from state prisons and county jails back into communities. Reduced to misdemeanors the personal use or being under the influence of most illegal drugs, including heroin and methamphetamine. Reduced to misdemeanors any crime where the value of property stolen doesn't exceed $950. This includes shoplifting, grand theft, receiving stolen property, forgery, and fraud. Does that sound familiar to some of you who might have seen a viral video of some dude masked up going into Walgreens and just taking up a bunch of stuff and the security was just recording the whole thing? That was in San Francisco. That's because of Proposition 47. You cannot remove the homeless that are breaking, vandalizing into small businesses in Los Angeles, Sacramento, San Francisco, whatever. To pick a city that to break into small businesses, they ransack the place, maybe steal some stuff, but they're mostly going in there to get high. The police can't do anything about it. Sometimes they're defecating, urinating in front of the storefront. Clients don't want to go into those stores. I touched on my news roundup before I retired that because of the pandemic, where a hairdresser in Sacramento couldn't take it anymore. Sacramento couldn't take it anymore, and she moved out of the state because she lost all business. It was before the lockdowns, folks. The police can't police because, well, it's like an activist said in the previous video. They got nowhere to go. So it's inhumane for you to take him somewhere, like a jail. Which is why what's happening in Venice Beach, one of the largest encampments of homeless in the city, not counting Skid Row, is going to be interesting since the Los Angeles County Sheriff, Villanueva, has set a goal that by January 4th, he will finish clearing that encampment out. Now I want to switch over to the housing affordability crisis. I want to be very clear on this. I talked about it on my program since the onset, basically since I started, or since I shifted to the Andre Segovia show from the Tech Corner. I've always said the housing affordability crisis. And I talked about the lack of inventory to buy. But when you hear politicians say the housing affordability crisis, in their mind, they're combining the two that I just mentioned. They mean housing units to lower the price. But when they say housing units, They're not referring to property that you can buy. They're talking about property you can rent. So we're talking about those luxury apartments, those lofts and whatever. Look, all this, because people ask, what is up with all these things being these high rises or low rises, with the first floor being commercial and the rest being residential apartments? What's up with all that? A lot of them being luxury lofts, renting for a premium. What's up with all that? Look, I'm not going to delve into this part. And maybe you can even Google it. Go to DuckDuckGo and check this out. It's called Agenda 21. Running a little dry there. Sorry, I need to drink some water. Well, as I was mentioning, Agenda 21, but whatever. The problem with that goal is that it doesn't address the affordability issue, especially when there's a lot more about this that I didn't know, and I learned a lot more from California Insider. It's a segment or a special segment from the Epic Times, which I strongly recommend. It's great. The past few months been covering a lot of issues, mostly around LA County. There's the councilman from Beverly Hills, who used to be the mayor there, I think 3 terms. He delved into this and gave some insight about this building and developments of these types.
Essentially, what you're telling me is that they're using the term affordability for making money. Is that the special interests are coming in and telling us we're going to build affordable housing, and they're not really doing that for benefiting the people that need the housing, right? Is that?
Well, they're not coming and saying, hey, we want you to do this so we can earn more money, so that we can provide more dividends to our shareholders, so that we can, they're not saying that. And I understand why. It wouldn't be a good look if they said that. They're not only, by the way, talking about affordability, they're talking about homelessness. They're trying to, say that because we haven't built enough housing, that's why people are homeless. And of course, to me, that's almost obscene. You've seen, I'm sure, pictures of homeless tent encampments next to luxury buildings, some of which probably have, empty units. But they're not going to say that. They're not going to, they're not going to say that we're in it because we want to earn money. But that's actually what it's about. And that's why this moniker, WIMBY, Wall Street in My Backyard, which was created by Zev Yaroslavsky and a journalist called Jill Stewart, is so powerful. They really are WIMBYs. And so, as said, I think you can disprove the notion that these policies themselves are going to create affordability. And I could go through with you policy by policy and explain to you and show you proof and show you, citations about why it's not going to create affordability, why upzoning alone will not create affordability. Actually, it will probably it will fuel speculation, it will create displacement, and it will not do anything to solve the homelessness crisis, which, as said, the fact that they're even using homelessness to try to justify these policies is pretty much nothing short of obscene.
I like that he highlighted that because it made me question a lot of things that I thought I knew about, because I'm not in the world of commercial real estate. I'm in the world of residential real estate and construction. And understanding that, I'm like, well, yeah, okay, the governor is streamlining these buildings, and then learning that the California Association of Realtors is really pushing the legislator to adopt more policies to build more of these things. But they've been going up everywhere, and it hasn't solved the problem. And some say that because of the housing affordability issue, that's what's contributed to our homeless. Well, not entirely so. When you have these statistics, look, I don't know who's doing all the statistics or readings on the homeless. Oh my goodness, I just had it here. But it's fascinating. At the very bottom, they have a breakdown of what they're on the streets for. Substance use disorder, HIV/AIDS, serious mental issues, developmental disability, physical disability. Look, some of that stuff is more expensive than any rent anybody's ever going to see. And I already talked about how rent control has been installed in Los Angeles since the 70s. And it has the highest rents in the country, and also the largest homeless population in the country. Wait, but I thought that was the solution, and they're the ones building the most. And yet we still have the highest rents possible. The housing affordability crisis is not going to go away overnight, and it's not going to be dealt with by making the I guess the commercial construction lobby rich. Yes, that's what I finally learned. This whole Wall Street in my backyard thing, as the councilman was referring to, and the California Association of Realtors basically pushing for more of that, and big tech even being behind a lot of this, because publicly they have funded some of this stuff, but with the pandemic and a lot of their employees working from home or now working from out of state, however it might be, whatever, I don't know, they are funding it in some other way, and the basically an insider into politics is telling you that that's exactly what they're doing. To what end, I wonder? And what good is it to a realtor if we can't sell apartments? It doesn't make sense, and it's not our clientele. If it were condos, then it'd be something different, because that goes to the consumer price index and whatever is calculated in terms of appraisals. Because you're going to hear a lot about appraisals in the coming days if you haven't done so already. And you're going to be hearing a lot of this from the federal level. So even if you're not in California, you're going to be dealing with it yourself. So what I'm getting at is that this is the California Association of Realtors pushing for all this. And I'm wondering, whose side are you on here? The side of the people or the side of big corporate interest? Because apparently you don't really care for generational wealth, California Association of Realtors. You want to start by fixing California? This is the Fix California stuff. Start by rescinding your pledge or donation to the recall campaign to defend Gavin Newsom. Start there and reallocate those funds to start putting a proposition in the works that will remove statewide rent control. The property owners have been the hardest hit in this state. Are you proud that Gavin Newsom is trying to spend $12 billion to fight homelessness? Where have I heard that number before? A tenth of that, $1.2 billion, was Proposition HHH in Los Angeles. From 2006, an article from Daily News. April 6, 2006. $12 billion for Los Angeles homelessness? How many more billions of dollars are we going to spend? Does that mean this was approved? No, this thing went down in flames. But a variation of that was trying to be done. And like I said, Gavin Newsom, $12 billion to house California's homeless. And where are you going to put them? In tiny homes? Look, the private sector has done a better job with tiny homes. Check this out.
This here on Chandler Boulevard in North Hollywood is the very first tiny home community in the city of Los Angeles. The tiny homes are 64 square feet, relatively small, but in each tiny home there are 2 beds, there are 4 windows, there is an air conditioning, there's heating. For anybody that walks on the property here, one of the first things that you'll notice is the vibrancy of colors. Colors just breathe life and hope. We provide 3 meals a day. And there's a hygiene trailer, so they have showers, they have clothes, they have case management, housing navigation, they have mental health services, job training, job placement. It's a one-stop shop that helps somebody move from the streets to sustainability to permanent housing.
But how long will that last? I don't know. Because we'll have to wait and see. People need to have their problems addressed. I cut this out of my previous episode, but I talked about it. There are some that have bought into the culture of being out on the streets. They don't want to be in a house. They don't want to be in a room. They like living out. In fact, there was a case, and here's a clip from the Daily Wire. I put this on my IGTV, but this is a clip from the Daily Wire, which there was some controversy regarding a veteran that was in the Venice boardwalk. And he was taken to the VA in downtown Los Angeles on Wilshire Boulevard. And they ended up spending the night on the streets. Like, wait, the VA didn't help him. And he said, no, it didn't. Check this clip out.
The group is upset over housing for an unhoused veteran with a medical condition named Robert.
I want it to be your decision, Robert.
On Tuesday, Robert accepted assistance from sheriff's deputies who drove him to the VA in West LA, even making one deputy emotional.
He reminds me of my dad, who was a veteran. It breaks my heart to see him here on the street.
But what happened once at the VA is causing controversy. Robert says he was left there and slept outside all night, ending up back on the beach the next day. Deputies say that's not true, and he was actually offered help but didn't want it.
My understanding now is that he was offered housing there at the veterans, at the VA. He refused. Robert was telling me, unless you have beachfront property, I'm not going to go.
Many here just don't want the help. Robert, 76, has diabetes and arthritis. Has anybody offered you housing?
Oh, yeah.
And?
It's unacceptable.
To everyone that's listening to me, California Association of Realtors, politicians, for any of you that actually care to address the housing affordability crisis, a solution that I never thought of, because again, I'm not in the condo world and I'm the commercial world at that level. This is a segment from my interview with Natalie Stewart from FHA Review that made the absolute most sense that can be done immediately with respect to the housing affordability crisis.
You've got the entire state of California talking about the affordable housing crisis, right? Like we're in the middle of a housing crisis. Nobody's talking about, and VA and FHA loans are the most affordable mortgages out there. Yet instead of taking existing housing stock, meaning condominiums that aren't approved for these types of affordable loans to make the average person and the average, be able to purchase these, we're creating all kinds of different programs to benefit investors, increasing rentals, lot dividing. Let's split up all the single family lots into 2 units, so then we can create and give investors the opportunity to rent out 1 unit. Why don't we take these large condo associations, get them certified for FHA and VA loans for people to use affordable mortgages? No, the conversation is not there. It is not important to anybody. The conversation isn't happening. And it's a shame.
And in terms of what we can do for homelessness, I brought it up again in the previous episode. A lot of stuff was talked about in the previous episode. But in the previous episode, I talked about the possibility of why not? Why can't the city just buy up with those funds from Proposition HHH, buy up dilapidated buildings and then have them renovated so they can house homeless through there, instead of having to build these new buildings that have to conform to ever-changing building codes that will take forever to get done. And I found out that actually that was tried in a way, because private property owners that own some of these buildings that are run down were trying to sell it to a private developer, a commercial developer that was trying to basically renovate it with Proposition HHH funds, which was actually approved to be used in that way at the time. But attorneys sued on behalf of people that were housed in that building to say, no, you can't do that, and convinced the LA City Council to amend the language of Proposition HHH should not allow that kind of building. Like, why? Because they said in order for the developer to renovate the building, that means they have to basically evict the people out of the building. And with nowhere else to go, that's going to contribute to more homelessness, and the shelters are overwhelmed. So where are they going to go? The reason that's like, some of you might say, well, why can't they just do it floor by floor and stuff like this? Well, it happens to do with EPA guidelines called the PPP rule. I'm thinking of the Payment Protection Program. No, the RRP, Repair, Renovate, and Paint rule that was passed under the Bush administration that went into effect in 2012, if I'm not mistaken, April 2012. This rule from the EPA requires if a wall is that's a painted wall is going to be disturbed for more than 6 square inches, you have to basically evacuate the premises, put a containment shield over it, use hemp vac, these environmental vacuums to basically contain this thing as if you're dealing with the virus of unknown origins that's currently causing the current worldwide pandemic, similar to that, in order to deal with the painting of said building. And with a lot of the buildings before 1978, you haven't been used lead-based paint and are for sure have asbestos in their ducting and other products in their pipes and all that. Of course, you can't have anybody habiting these things. The government getting in the way of the government to do something for the people. You can't make this stuff up, folks. You can't make it up. So there goes my idea. But at least Natalie Stewart's idea is still one that is viable. That's the world she works in and that I didn't know about. And I think that's a great solution that should at least be looked at. But in the meanwhile, hold the politicians accountable. Make sure Eric Garcia does not serve another term. And as for what the heck is happening on the streets to not being able to police these things to protect private property and to protect businesses and all that, well, that's what Recall Gascon's all about. You want to know more about that? Let me know in the comment section down below, and I'll try to get any information that I can. This is where I leave it with my discussions about Fix California. It's a mess, really hard to do. Honestly, just rip the bandage off. That's the only way. But one thing's for sure. If you hear them say, "I'm from the government, I'm here to help," there's a reason those are the scariest words in the English language. They're not here to help. They made the problem worse. And if you're seeing this part of the video, that means I clipped out a section where I went on a rant. And the only way for you to see that rant would be in the show notes of the company's episode of www.dangeroussegovia.com. It's a message that I send to the California Association of Realtors because they are not serving the people they intend to serve. They're only serving and lining the pockets of special interest and giant corporations. That explains why I'm not wearing a pin on this one. I didn't, like, Doc Holliday says in Tombstone, my hypocrisy can only go so far. I just couldn't wear it. Not for this. Not when they're responsible for a lot of the crap that's going on with the affordability crisis and what happened with rent control, which in turn contributes to homelessness in a way.
And that does it for this throwback episode of The Andres Segovia Show. Thank you so very much for watching it. Follow me across the socials at The Andres Segovia, on X_Andres Segovia. Anything and everything about me is at theandresegovia.com. And if you want to support the show, the best way I ask you to do so is by supporting my affiliate links down below. You shop for some of these things and consider my partners because, hey, it'll help keep the lights on over here. Anyway, that's it. I appreciate you. I'll see you on the next one.